Hey everybody, welcome to the Paddle Pursuit. So this is a very special episode. We have been talking about this guy, Rob Mirlen, as you know him on social media. He's here at the house. We're doing a super special episode. It was Rob's idea to do a Hot One style version of podcast. So Hot Ones is where you consume a hot wing and then ask a question, and the wings get progressively hotter. So each guest and the host is going to get super uncomfortable as the questions start to get equally as uncomfortable. Rob, thank you so much for taking the time to come up here and be part of the show.
Awesome. No, I'm happy to be here. This one of my favorite shows to watch, and I don't mind getting uncomfortable.
So we have mentioned Rob. He is the one, if you have ever attended or heard of the Sharkbite in Florida, it no longer exists. And we got Rob here so we can interrogate him about this, the past leading up to that. And overall, Rob is a super wealth of information, and I think this is going to be a great episode. So as we get into it, the first wing that we have from Hot Ones, it's one of their proprietary blends. It is a buffalo hot sauce at 1,800 Scoville. And if you don't know what that means, that's not a lot. We're going to get into the millions as we go along. So, first up, we got to eat this wing. Let's see it. Buffalo style. That's no problem at all. This whole challenge is going to be so easy. That actually came out pretty good. That was a really good buffalo hot style. How'd you like that?
No, exactly. Like very balanced. I enjoy the butter addition to it, but yeah, like what more do you have to put at me?
So, Rob, tell us about your start in paddling and your first paddle discipline getting into the world of paddle racing.
Yeah, so, wow. Probably, let me do this as a two-part. What brought me into the paddling world is I would go to summer camp. If anybody's from the Dunedin area, hammock day camp. And that was like a stay away camp, but you went home every day. And in that camp, we did outdoor living skills and canoeing and archery and so forth and so on. And I just gravitated towards the paddling part of it. And, you know, quick funny story about that is when I went through that camp as a camper, and then I became a counselor. So my initiation as a counselor, when I was dumb, I got pushed out. Now, so I was a teenager. I got pushed out back into the creek without a paddle. So after drifting down a little bit, I found a piece of wood, just a random piece of driftwood floating around, and I used it as a paddle and made it back and got everybody like super upset at me. But between hammock day camp and then I would go to a stay away camp every summer for a week or two as well. Camp Wakaiva up there near the Wakaiva River in Orlando. And that's where I really got into kayaking. So yeah, so that's what brought me to it initially, or to be open-minded for paddling. What locked the deal was my freshman year of college. So I ran track and so forth, and I kind of injured my leg a little bit. And so my background is exercise science, and I needed something else to do cardio, something that was going to be fun. So my first ever real kayak was an ocean kayak, sit on top kayak that was raspberry. It was pink. It was basically pink. And at that particular time, I got that from Agua Azul Kayaks, which used to be a major kayak shop in the Clearwater area. Some of the old timers like me will know Agua Azul really well. And long story short, over the next year, I think I owned 9 kayaks, and it was just really apparent very quickly that I had a talent in it, a natural talent in it, and I just loved it.
What was it like getting into an ocean kayak sit on top for the first time?
Yeah, so my first true kayak sit inside composite fiberglass boat, I was a big fan of Neki kayaks. And so my first was actually a Neki Luxia 4 with a drop-down skeg. And I mean, it was just like, oh, let me go ahead and get off my donkey and jump in a Ferrari. Even at just that distance, a 17-foot boat with around 22 and a half inch beam, which by today's comparisons, what I paddle, that sounds like insane, but yeah, it was just like jumping into a hot rod, jumping into a European sports car. And that was really when I realized, wait, I can kind of go fast in these things. And that was kind of the start of this might become a sport for me.
So one of the prevalent things within the podcast is talking about the swim tax, right? When did you feel like you first had to start paying your swim tax going into the kayaking world?
Yeah, so just to bring that in. So I went from a Neki Luksha 4 to a Neki Luksha 3 to a 2, which was almost like a decked surf ski in a way, but it was still around that 19 and a half to 20 inch wide realm. So it was still pretty stable. And at that time, so now we're moving into late 90s, early 2000s. Around that time, I was starting to show up on the race scene a little bit. I have a story I can tell about, how I got into my first race. But yeah, so I was getting into the race scene a little bit, primarily just here in Florida, just locally for the most part. And the surf ski guy, I started to finish in a kayak up with some of the surf ski guys, Andy Gerber, Ed Joy, people like that. And so I took 2 more years of torment from them being called Kayak Boy. So I was not Rob Mirlenbrink, I was Kayak Boy for quite a while. And then, someone I owe a lot to my paddling, my paddling career. Andy finally browbeat me into a surf ski. My first surf ski was through Bruce Gibson, Venture Sport, down in Miami Boca. And it was Mako XT. So 19 by 19, very user-friendly boat. And kind of like I think these wings are going to be as we go a little bit further on. Oh, that's not really too much. Like, oh, I got this. So about 6 months into that, boom, I outgrew this and went into a Mako Millennium, which time-wise, everything adds up, Mako Millennium, so forth and so on. And I kid you not, I probably swam 500 times in the first year of paddling that boat alone. And my best swim of memory I can remember, we used to have a race down in Venice, a jetty to jetty race. It was sponsored by Sharkies down there, and was actually doing pretty well. I stayed in the boat and made the turn buoy, saw a shark, and immediately fell in. So that was probably one of the most memorable, swims in that first year. And then completing that race, I actually was doing pretty well until we had to come in through a few little runners, and I probably spent 5 minutes because I refused to swim the boat into the finish line. So I probably spent 5 minutes falling out, getting back in, falling back in, getting in. So my swim debt was definitely in a Fen Kayaks Mako Millennium. Still, in my opinion, one of the fastest, tippiest boats around.
Yep, getting into the Fen Millennium, it makes you appreciate the progression in innovation that boats have gone through. Like, they have been fast, but back then they were so mean. And boats are a little bit nicer today, and they're still relatively fast in comparison.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to the second question, or the second wing. All right, we're here with wing number 2, and we have the Samsa House Smoky, 6,000 Scoville. So this is almost 4 times as hot as the last one. So here we go. Let's try it out. It is a jalapeno-style cherry wood smoke. Mrs. Norman, can I have...
Yeah.
I think Rob needs one too. Awesome. So how was that wing?
That was good. So typically, I do like spice, but I typically don't do well with green spice for some reason.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Red all day long, green. But no, I mean, actually, that one I actually liked quite a bit more than the last one. Good flavor to it. Like I said, The name was kind of long, but yeah, no, great flavor to that.
So, our next question. Tell us about Florida paddling history from a racing dynamic. So, your integration into the sport, some memorable history races, and some of the progression of Florida paddling in the last almost 30 years.
Yeah, sure. So, so getting in that kind of late '90s time is when I kind of came on. To that scene, and here in the Tampa Bay area, we actually had a really big Florida race called the Weeden Island Power Paddle, and the intention of the race was to actually go from the Gandy Causeway back into the actual tunnels and mangrove trails. And anybody who's been in there, that's not necessarily the most composite boat or understern rudder friendly areas with oyster bars and such. But probably my first year of the race is actually how I got into racing. So I was working for Agua Azul Kayaks. So I went from buying a pink boat to owning like 9 in the first year to them actually offering me a job to be a tour guide. And so anyhow, they were a sponsor of the race. So they had a few comp entries. And I was there demoing boats, and they were like, "Hey, you used to run track. Like, we have a comp entry. Do you want to go?" And without any training, without any real thought about this was actually a thing, I got 3rd place and was right with like 1st and 2nd. So that was like the race that actually brought on racing for me. But that was a big race. That was the race where we first saw some of the first OC1s in Florida.
Oh, wow.
And that would have been Lex Ross, Harry Mountain. And like I said, this would have been late 90s, early 2000s. At that time, FCPA was still going strong like it is now. John's been involved in putting on, fun events for a very long time. And but I would definitely say the 3 biggest ocean races we had at the time would have been the Weeden Island Power Paddle, which eventually turned into a primarily open water race that usually had bad weather and actually some bump to take advantage of. And then back in that day, we used to have the East Coast Surf Ski Championship, which was put on by Bruce Gibson with Venture Sport. And that was in down in that like Boca area, and that was always kind of a little bit of a wake-up call for us West Coast paddlers, because the East Coast waters could definitely be a little bigger than what we were used to here. But for many years, the pinnacle race in Florida and the pinnacle race for the Southeast at that time was actually the Bogey and Bacall Classic, which was in Key Largo. So I missed the very first year of that, but then I went to the subsequent 13 years following that in February. It was just a great event. It primarily started as mainly just a kayak race. And then as the sport started to evolve in Florida, we had surf skis, we had outriggers, 1s and 6s. And actually, Epic's very first V10 actually made its debut at that race. That would have been, like I said, right there, probably 2003, 2004. And really interesting, too, because I'll never forget it. It was baby blue, all baby blue, and at the time that was their color scheme that they were going to go with. And then evidently, everyone knows they ended up going with white, and then eventually the red tips or the black tips and so forth. But the start of racing for me was just a couple big races, and then the FCPA races that happened back then. It seemed like, and we're back to that now. Gosh, sometimes almost every weekend there seems to be an FCPA race, which I value quite a bit for my paddling experience, because I learned race tactics. John Edwards has put me into the bushes more times than I could ever count. So that was kind of the race scene in Florida from the late 90s through about 2008. 2009, a couple big races, and then then the FCPA races to kind of fill in the blanks and get some training for those bigger races.
So all three of the big races that you mentioned, two of them no longer exist, and the East Coast Surf Ski Championships is not what it used to be, right? What kind of goes into watching those rises and falls? What is some of the perspective on some of those races not existing anymore?
Yeah, I think more than anything, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but putting on an event is a labor of love. It's lots of work. If you're lucky, lots of appreciation. But I truly think each race runs its own course. And the people who are putting that race on, whether it's a committee, whether it's a couple, Frank and Monica, who put on the Bogey Bacall Classic for all of those years, it's a labor of love. So, at some point life changes and it's time for them to move on. And then as the industry, as in the paddling industry, and as in the state parks and rec industry has gotten more difficult, it's made some race directors, question whether or not it's really worth that labor to host their event.
Yeah, with the FCPA, one of the big powers is how laid back it is. But like you said, they're small events, right? And having these large events, those are the big things that entice people to continue in the sport, to train. The FCP races, they're like sharpening the sword, but nobody gets really stoked about these because they're small. But running a few FCPA races myself each year, it's very simple. We just have to get a timer, we yell start, and we all go. But it's nothing in comparison to some of these major full-on events. All right, we'll move on to wing number 3. All right, wing number 3, we got Funky Stellar Fuzz, 1900 Scoville. So it's 3 times as hot as the last one, and it is habanero garlic, and it looks like it's going to be spicy. All right.
So this is 19,000, and there's a 2.6 million in looming. So yes, but good. Like this is one I would do again at home.
Yeah, this one was really good. Yeah, you can definitely taste that. So, talking about Florida paddling history, some of the trends coming and going, we got to spend some time, and we got to talk about stand-up paddleboard. So tell us, stand-up paddleboard hits the scene. I've seen photos of you online on a stand-up paddleboard, but I've never heard you mention stand-up paddleboard unless interrogated about it. So tell us about seeing that trend coming, the explosion in paddle racing from it, and ultimately how it's transitioned into today.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I resisted it. I was probably I probably resisted it for a good 2 years. So many of you who know my ex, Karen Tickner, who unfortunately had recently passed, a tough thing there. She made that jump right away, and she excelled right away at the sport. And I don't know, I think I was just a bit of a surf ski snob. I was kind of drinking that Kool-Aid a little too much. But so now moving into the 2009 into 2010, 11, she started doing the race circuit, so I traveled with her. And those of us who race know it's all well and fine to say, hey, I'll sit this one out. But then you are jonesing right the minute that start line goes, that gun goes off. You are jonesing to be out there. So it only took a couple races of her out there, and they were great locations. There was the Sup South series that was from like Tennessee to Carolinas to Georgia to Florida. There were some really fun races and really good series. It only took a few, and I was like, okay, yeah, no, like if I'm traveling all this way, I got to race. So being influential, like I try to be, I just started hitting up the race directors and saying, hey, I'll pay the entry fee as an exhibition class. I don't even care, and I'll go out I'll go out and do it. So I started doing that a bit, kind of got in with the SUP crowd a little bit more. But ultimately, the story of me and SUP, and this was kind of around the time that it blew up, it really blew up here in Florida. So Gary Wise, who I hope we can get on your podcast, it might be an adult rated version. So Gary Wise was the WPA Southeast Region Director, and he was ready to step on from that. And Gary and I had met each other, a few mutual paddling friends, and he saw some drive and motivation in me, and he offered me the WPA Southeast Region Director spot. But at this point, I was paddling OC as well as surf ski, quite proficiently. I had done Molokai at that point, in outrigger, and but I hadn't paddled SUP. And I mean, let's just be serious. Egos don't allow. Who is this young guy in his 30s who's taking over the Southeast region, and he doesn't even paddle SUP? So, when Gary made me that offer, we talked about it, and it was like, yeah, I'm going to have to get on a SUP and at least be able to talk the talk, walk the walk. And so that's exactly what I did. So got my first displacement board, and kind of started with it. But I'll be honest, I did not make the same conversion. Like I said, I had some immediate success in kayak and then surf ski, but I definitely did not with SUP. I just don't have the overall horsepower to push that inefficient hull through the water, over and over and over and over again. But getting into it, like I said, kind of out of the necessity to be able to run this Southeast region, it was really great how the culture was there. Like, everyone got along, and the events were fun, and there was an after party, and so there was a lot going on in the event, and they were just fun. So you looked forward to the next SUP race because they were a lot of fun. But at the same time, we had the standalone surf ski and outrigger races, and I won't name any names, but kind of in my mind, for the Tampa Bay region, kind of the West Central Florida region, kind of the pivotal point that pushed this and really created the combination of events accepting all paddlecraft. We had a race at a location here in West Central Florida, and there was literally a SUP race and an outrigger and surf ski race going on the same day at the same location. Two separate organizers with no interaction. And I knew both crowds. And it was crazy because there literally was a sign that said private party only, outriggers and surf skis. And then there was another one that was basically SUP paddlers. So it was just like, wow, okay, how about we just put a big old sword between these sports come from one another. We all have a love of the water. We all share the water. So it was really that incident where I said, I'm going to make changes. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make these changes. And I have the platform in order to do it now. So Byron Kurt, who started the WPA out in California, had met with him a few times. And I went to him and said, hey, listen, so WPA, those who don't know what it is we sanctioned 10 to 12 races in a region. And that was kind of a points series. But those races had to follow certain parameters in order to be sanctioned. And that went from safety to awarding classes, so forth and so on. So I went to Byron and said, hey, so this is ridiculous and I want to change it. Are you okay with me? This year I'm going to make it optional, but next year it will be a requirement. You will not be a sanctioned race in the Southeast if you don't offer divisions for all classes. Now, don't have to award. You can do the 5 rule. You can do the 10 rule. You got to have 10 in a class, 5 in a class. but he was good with it, and that's kind of how we started to see these mega events starting to build. Because when I had a race director come to me and say, "Hey, I want my race to be one of the WPA sanctioned races," I was like, "Great, but I'm going to ask you to add categories for kayak, surski, and outrigger, and you don't have to award them if they don't represent, but if they represent, I kind of want you to award them." And then just at that same time, so now we're moving into 2000, probably 11, 12, SUP just blew up in this country. And, I remember from my race, Sharkbite, going from maybe having 20 to 30 SUPs to the next year having over 100, and taking the overall race numbers from a combination of maybe around 150 to 200 to bringing the overall race to 300 racers. So, and it was great. I mean, it was a great run. SUP was pumping a whole lot of money into the races. I mean, we're talking sometimes $10,000 prize sponsorship. Danny Ching once at a race over in Daytona won $10,000 cash for first place only, and they tried to give it to him in cash in a Pelican case, handcuffed. So it was just that's just a crazy example of how much money was being pumped into SUP, because it was the next greatest best thing. And even small regional races that used to have anywhere between 30 to 50 people, we're now seeing 100, 120 racers. So the success, in my opinion, I think we can exclude California and Hawaii from this, but in my opinion, the success of paddling still today in the South, 100% is due to SUP, because it put paddling as an event and something I can do as a competitor. It actually put it on the map. Because let's be serious. You and I think so, and our wives think so. But is surfski really sexy?
Hell no.
Is outrigger sexy?
Right, but stand-up
paddling is, because I've got my abs and I've got my shirt off. I'm wearing my bikini. So it was really pivotal to really put paddling as an event on the map. And Florida really was able to grab a hold of it. And we had races pop from the Panhandle to Daytona to Cocoa Beach to Miami to Key West. The Key West race primarily started as a lifeguard event, where it was just, hey, lifeguards got together, fastest time around the island. You could take whatever course you wanted. And then it wasn't until that same time frame when Michael Westenberger, Westy, the story is, and I don't know this for true, that he bought the race for $1 in a bar on a drunken night. Some people may or may not know the full truth to that story. And then obviously that became the juggernaut that it was, and one of the most difficult, most challenging races in Florida that embraced all paddlecraft from day one.
Yeah, and there's, I like to refer to it as class of, on like when people start paddling. And so I'm class of 2014, and it was SUP, right? And if it wasn't for SUP and everything you just described about the events being fun, I got done with my first race, and I'm like, when's the next one, right? And it just starts this, kind of domino effect. But like you said, back then, it was so much fun. And there's a lot of times when I go to races now where it's like, it's business, right? Like you're trying to do these things, and then the after party and how cool the event is, some of those things fall to the wayside. So watching SUP decline, but most of those paddlers transition to other sports, right? What is some of the commentary on how events used to be versus some of the events today? And like, is there a way to recapture that magic and recapture some of that trendiness that SUP brought originally?
Yeah, I think we're in a loop, and I've seen this now twice, where we had, like I said, some bigger regional events, and then smaller races, and then and then we had a fill-in of a bunch of other races jumping out because charitable organizations and businesses thought, hey, I can make some money off of this. And so we saw a real influence of races. And like I said, the sponsorship money that got injected in was pretty huge too. But then it's fallen to the wayside. And where I see us going now with the race scene, particularly here in Florida, is we're going back to that. We're going to go back to having just a few larger regional races that do it right. That I'm pretty picky, and I consult with a lot of race directors. I give my advice to a lot of race directors around the state, but award the paddlers. So there's very few of us who are professionals who make our living through this sport, and by giving an award or just even calling someone up on stage and recognizing them, you can have whatever rules you want, 5 in a class in order to actually get a trinket, to get a medal. But you know what? Like, for example, if you have a woman finish first overall in a surf ski race in front of the men, but there was only one, and you don't say anything about her, absolutely ridiculous. That person is never coming back to your race, and it's telling a story for everyone else. But I've always believed that, call those people up. Even if there's just one in a class, guess what? I'm calling that person up because that's the person that's going to support my event and the next event and the next event. And that little medal or that little kukui nut lei that they can take back to their office, that can justify to their wife, their children, their boss, that time away from work. When, hey, I got to take off this weekend. I got to race down in Miami. I don't want to drive the morning of. I'll be too tired. It's little things like that aren't happening, and they need to. I mean, again, doesn't cost you anything. You could just get some generic leis from Oriental Trading Company. It's the recognition of getting called up and given recognition in front of your peers. We amateur or not, professional or amateur, we train hard, right? Each person trains hard, and they want to be recognized for the time that they spent away from home, away from loved ones, to do something that they love, but they want to be recognized for that. So I think that's one of the pivotal things that I think has changed. The other thing is, you hit it right on the head. It's become business. Because guess what? The outspoken people are the ones that usually speak up. It's the people who love the events that, oh gosh, this was so fun, I can't look to next year. But I can't tell you as a race director, as a regional race director, how many times it was like I dealt with complaints following the race. Well, I've got to get back home. I can't make it to the awards party. Can I get my award now? And like I said, it's those kind of things that make it difficult, because like you said, I mean, some of the best races that I've ever been to, in the state, outside of the state, international, have been when it's been a festival event was a festival from having workshops, and lessons offered to a welcome night to, hey, you have your awards party and this is a destination race and we're going to have an awards party and we're going to recognize all of the classes that were out there today.
Awesome. We'll move on to wing number 4. All right, we're here with wing number 4. We got the Los Calientes Verde from Hot Ones themselves. It is the undisputed sauce of summer, and it is a green sauce, which Rob is adverse to, but we'll see what he thinks.
This one's Los Caliente?
Yes.
Not to be confused with Caliente, the nudist resort in Pasco County.
Which I frequent with Christina Norman. Isn't that right, Christina? She's shaking her head no.
It is only clothing optional, so whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, we go down
literally.
Yeah, Robert wears his G-string.
So that one is 36,000 Scoville, which is double the last one, and it's kind of a game of doubles all the way up to 2.7 million. Rob, what do you think about that one?
Well, I might keep saying this, but that's my new favorite one. So, it's just got real good. It's just got real good taste. But I can actually start to feel like it wasn't, but now there's a little burn on the back sides of the tongue starting to build in. So Hey, this is why I had the idea. So come on, bring the heat.
So I am guilty of whatever somebody's name is on Facebook is their name for the rest of their life. We have this lady from Hawaii. Her name is Lulu, but I call her Luann because she's Luann on Facebook. Rob Merlin is Rob Merlin on Facebook and Instagram, right? Why have you dropped the Brink part of your name? Are you heir to the Brink home security fortune and you don't want people to know? Are you on the run from law enforcement agencies? Why only half of your name?
So it actually goes back. You said you're from the class of 214.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually goes back further than that. So those of you who have known me before that, it 100% just came down to me not being hip and not fully understanding how Facebook worked. So when I first started Facebook, I was actually Merlin Paddle.
Ah.
And I stayed that way for quite a while. But people started calling me Merlin, just like thinking my first name was Merlin. So
Sure.
I just started to become Merlin everywhere. So it was after a few years of that, I just changed it to Rob Mirlenbrink. And to be honest, I mean, I'm proud of my last name, but it's 11 letters and no one can ever spell it right. And whenever I say it, they still think my first name is Merlin because, oh, what's your name? Mirlenbrink. And I'm getting a prescription at the pharmacy. And if it takes more than a minute, I have to look because they're looking in the B's. And I'm usually like, no, my name's not Merlin. So it originated from me not being hip and not understanding Facebook and having Merlin Paddle to then being like, well, everyone knows me by Merlin. So I'm going to keep the Merlin part, just throw the Rob in front of it.
So having the name mistyped, I am guilty of that. And I have called you Merlin Brick at one of our K2N regattas. And the person that found that the most funny is Chad Seipel. And I hope you're still watching, Chad, because this whole question was for you on the Brick. Rob is
Chad Sipple, well, which he still gets. And I was victim of giving him in the past as well. So, yeah, he definitely gets that one.
Yeah,
yes.
He's Chad Chuggle from now on. He doesn't sip the water. He chugs the water. All right, we'll move on to wing number 5. All right, we got wing number 5, the Good Heat Queso Sin Queso, 52,000 Scoville. So this is a pretty saucy, cheesy sauce. So we're going to crack into it and see what we think. Have you guys had this one? Is this good?
We haven't tried it yet.
That is awesome. This is so good. Oh my goodness. How's that even possible? How can they put cheese in there? There's no way. That's incredible.
That is a great sauce.
Yeah, it says they have spicy umami in there as well. That's why it's so savory. How do they get cheese in there? Oh my, that's so good. I gotta say, that's my favorite one so far.
That one is solid.
That is very good.
I licked all of my fingers clean.
That is an excellent one. All right, so for number 5, if you guys watch Hot Ones, you know that they do an Instagram deep dive. And I did my due diligence to try and get this show as authentic as we can get it. So, Rob, tell us about the Prion Whitewater kayak that you picked up in Colorado in your 2017 road trip towards the West Coast.
Yeah, so that point was about halfway through the 4-month trip. And we were driving through Colorado looking for breweries, go figure. And we stopped in this little town that had an awesome hot spring. So this hot spring was actually in a recreation center, and you paid $10 and you got to actually have your own, they piped in the hot water, the mineral water, and you got to have your own little bath, basically. And at that point, Christina and I did not have our camper, so we were mainly tenting. So we may or may not have been a little bit stinky. But anyway, we had a great soak at the rec center. I was chatting with one of the attendants there, and they said, "Oh, you should go check out downtown." So we drove around the corner, checked out downtown. There was a kayak shop. Of course, I'm going to stop in. So for that entire road trip, I did have a surf ski with me, an Epic V10L. Still one of my favorite boats. Shouldn't have gotten rid of it. I'll have one of those. And at that point, we were going to be Colorado, Montana. We were going to be in the West. So I said to myself, hey, I need to get a whitewater boat. Mm-hmm. So went in, I wheeled and I dealed, and gosh, I had actually paddled one of those before. So at one time when I worked at the kayak shop in my youth, we got into paddle surfing. So got a hold of a couple whitewater kayaks. So I was like, yeah, sure. It'll be like riding a bike. So we had that Prion and bought it. Went to the first river that I thought, okay, I can handle. This shouldn't be a problem. And it was a low water year. So it was like a fluffy bunny rather than a class 2 or 3 that I was looking for. And then that was kind of the unfortunate moral of the story. So truth be told, while it looked cool on my truck, it only got used twice the entire rest of the trip.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, and whitewater seems to be a very regionally dominated thing. And I tell everybody, if we had big whitewater in Florida, that's all I do, right? But I'm not going to drive 10 hours each way to get a class 2 or class 3. So we use our own whitewater machine, which is the ocean, which is much closer.
Ocean. Yeah.
And so a lot of these sports where people excel, it's all regionally dominated. If you live on the Atlantic, you're going to get good at the ocean or you're going to die, right?
Yep.
And the same with the whitewater scene, right? If you're in the Midwest, you have all of these opportunities to, kind of command these larger rivers.
Yeah, we almost had it. So when Florida was bidding for the Olympics, and I don't remember what year it was, but I want to say it was the Olympics that Atlanta ended up getting. Mm-hmm. And we were in bid for it. Obviously, Atlanta ended up winning out, but they were going to build, because you need whitewater,
right?
The Ocoee up there near Nantahala and such is just a little too far. So they were going to build a salt water. It would have actually been the first one, not the one that happened in Greece. It would have been the first salt water whitewater park, and it was going to be in Crystal River, using the outfall canals, the water from the what was going to be that cross Florida shipping canal that never ended up happening.
Yeah.
That was in the region it was going to be, and they were going to use that brackish / salt water. So those of us who were paddling then, it was kind of like, wow, gosh, that would be absolutely so cool. And unfortunately, it never happened, and huge expense.
So in an alternate reality, so if you guys don't know, watching, so we're located in Inverness for the show. I run my club in Hernando. Crystal River is closer to us than Hernando is from Inverness. And so in an alternate reality, had they had built that, I would have gotten into that as like a teenager. So
yeah, you would have been a whitewater rat.
Can you imagine? And I would have been an elitist. I'd be like, man, these ocean paddlers, they don't get it, man. We have to brave rocks with our helmets.
And that would have circled right back to the Caliente Nudist Resort, because my first time paddling whitewater, I was at the river with a couple guys, and they were like, all right. And we got out of the car, and they immediately just got naked and changed into their paddling kit. And I was just like, wow, okay. And looking around the parking lot, and it's just men, women, people were just getting naked. So I was kind of like, all right, well, this is definitely a different culture than what I'm used to being an ocean and river paddler, a flat, calm river paddler. So that was kind of one of my first whitewater experiences. It was like, wow, okay, yeah, this is how we do it.
This is a perfect segue into wing number 6. All right, wing number 6, we got Cantina Royal Bourbon Maple Reaper. And we have some milk out as well, and it's not spiked. It's just clean old milk, just in case. Milk is supposed to make the burn easier, but I haven't seen that be effective yet. But I think it's like a placebo effect. You feel better when you're drinking the milk.
Thanks for ruining it.
All right, we'll dig in and we'll see what we think of this one. Have you guys tried this one yet?
Not yet.
This smells hot.
So there's a lot of maple in that, so it tastes like breakfast. Mm-hmm. Breakfast from hell, if you know what I'm saying. It's pretty spicy.
So this one is continuing to build.
That's right. The Reaper usually it's like going on a roller coaster. You're going up to the top of the roller coaster for a little while, so just kind of hang on.
This Reaper's a creeper.
So we got the first spicy wing. This works out perfect. I had an idea that number 6 was going to be
okay. It's building
where things start building,
good.
right? So we're going to ask Rob the some of the tougher questions. So we're going to start talking about Sharkbite. So the next couple of wings here, we're talking about Sharkbite. So Sharkbite in its inception. What was the original idea? What was the landscape of paddle racing? And what was the initial start in getting that going?
Yeah, so kind of a fun, a little bit wild story. So jumping on a tangent just for a moment, but paddling has brought a lot to my life, a lot of experiences, a lot of people that I value as friends. At that particular point, we're looking at about 2003 was the first Sharkbite. I had already had some just great experiences, meeting cool people, just being experienced the things that I never thought that, that I would do, and just being immersed into that culture. Where did the race come from? So, Honeymoon Island State Park. Very good friend of mine, who some who listen to this will know, Mike Moran. Also, probably largely responsible for me becoming a paddler. He became a very good friend of mine. I met him at Agua Azul. I sold him a kayak. And just like me, he came back multiple times and was buying kayaks right and left. But I met him, and he was buying this kayak, and he's like, "We're going to see the monkeys," and he meant Silver River, the rhesus monkeys.
Yeah.
And here was this guy who looked old at the time, and those of us who know Mike and love Mike, like I'm thin, Mike was skinny, and here he is on top of his van. And he's like, "We're going to see monkeys, do you want to come?" And that was kind of my friendship with Mike. But then Mike ended up pulling me into Friends of the Island Park, which was a volunteer organization that raised money for Honeymoon Island. And the state park manager at the time, everything kind of comes circle, used to work at Agua Azul. And so it was kind of a match made in heaven. And so he prefaced us starting a race. A lot of people don't know, but a lot of the state parks in Florida, you get money based on the size of your park, not necessarily on your attendance. So the most visited state park in Florida, Honeymoon Island, can't buy the nice toilet paper because they get the same money as a park of their size. So we started the event to raise money for things that they didn't have. The fun part about it is the name didn't happen until 7 or 8 years into the event. So Sharkbite Challenge, not necessarily good for tourism. So the first 6 years of the race, it was actually called the Caladisi Kayak Challenge. And we were required to include Caladisi. So that meant the race started from the south end of the island, went through the pass, down Caladisi and back. Well, one year I had the great idea to make it a little bit more fun. And this is a shout out to John Edwards, because he won the race overall this year, that particular year. So we started from the south end of the island, went inland to the intercoastal, went around the no motor signs into Old Dunedin Pass, and then you had to portage over to the Gulf and back up to Honeymoon. And John was in a Hurricane OC1, and if I remember rightly, it was yellow. And he was just off a little bit, like the fast outrigger guys are, just off the top surf skis, just a little bit. But John being John having scouted it beforehand, whatever he did, as soon as he hit the Dunedin Pass, it was not low tide, but it was on the lower tide side. He immediately got out of his canoe, threw it on his shoulder, and ran the entire length of the pass, portaged over, and got such a lead on the surf skis that he ended up winning first overall that year. But yeah, the state park was not okay with Caladisi, with Sharkbite, so it had to become Caladisi Kayak Challenge. And it actually took, until that going on 8th year, where the state park manager of Caladisi became the state park director for all of Florida. And, not to get anybody in trouble, but we kind of got whatever we wanted at that point. Mm-hmm. And so that is officially when it became the Sharkbite Challenge. And that's one of the things I tell all race directors. You got to inflect some emotion, just a bland name. I don't want to call out any races, but just a bland name, it doesn't do anything for me. I mean, mm-hmm. SBC, or Sharkbite as it became, fondly known as, that incited some motion and some feeling to it. And that's one of the first pieces of advice that I give a race director if they talk to me about putting on a race.
Awesome.
Make it fun.
So we'll segue into wing number 7. All right, we're in the part of the show where things get serious. The first 6, that's just for fun. But these last 4, it's for blood. It's for money. It's for pink slips. It's for high stakes. We got the La Pimenteri Forbidden Fruit, 124,000 Scovilles, which, if you don't know, that's a lot. Let's see. It is peppers fermenting for months leading up to this launch, and we know you're going to love it. That's the description. Yeah.
This one's burning my nose just smelling it.
Yep, me too. All right, let's dig in and see if this is one that we're going to love. You guys are going to eat this? Why did I get a super chunky wing? Give me a skinny one. That one is pretty hot. All right, Rob, we caught you on your heels. Let's ask you the next question. So looking at Sharkbite's progression, you started to bring in professionals from all over the world, whether for clinics or to race, and to kind of reestablish to Florida racers what speed really is. Tell us about some of your favorite professionals that made the trip over to Florida and some of the impact that it had as a race director, having them show up and participate.
Yeah, so being able to get the pros and not being a prize money race. Okay, wow, this is burning now. And not having the prize money took some work, and I have to give the credit to the sponsors, mm-hmm. to Think Kayaks, to Epic Kayaks, for bringing in the athletes. But it also was strategically placed on our part because Sharkbite was a big event, and its biggest year we had close to 600 racers between both days. And how it worked, we were close enough to the Molokai race, which just happened, mm-hmm. That it was beneficial for the companies to bring their athletes in and let them do demos and let them do workshops as they went. They landed on the East Coast and they worked across to the West Coast and then ultimately over to Hawaii. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of it was planned, but then we had some great assistance from the companies bringing in. But to give you my most memorable or the pro I was most excited about coming in is hard. I'll give you 2 stories because 2 different reasons. But like many people, Oscar Chalupsky, absolutely, kind of my role model, my idol of paddling. So him attending Sharkbite when he began representing Nalo kayaks. Mm-hmm. But just to actually meet this guy, larger than life, just an amazing personality, was absolutely incredible. But my favorite athlete that came in is, if you know surf ski paddling, you know this name, but it's not one of the superstars. But Matt Bowman,
Sure.
who is like 6'8", and his first Sharkbite performance, I think, was the one that showed people like, okay, I'm good. This guy's next level. This was one of the first on a not great day. That was one of the things about Sharkbite. Like, if I could hold it, I did. Because it had challenge in the name for a reason. It was billed as an offshore race, and you had to be comfortable paddling offshore. But he was the first one to average over 8 miles an hour for an 8-mile course. So I usually dialed those in right at about 8 miles. As you remember, it always included one little stupid quick turn at the end, which sent people all over the place. But if I remember right, his time was somewhere right around 55, 56 minutes for an 8-mile course. And he had no competition. It didn't even look like he was paddling. But that one to me was influential, because at that point I had been to some international races, some world stage races. But the average Florida paddler just did not understand how fast. You're fast. People think, your club, you're fast. But then a guy like this that puts minutes on the fastest racer in Florida. It was something that I wanted to do, and I finally got to do it.
It's one of the things I love about that is, and I mentioned on one of the recent podcasts, is like, I don't race because I know I'm so good and I'm God's gift to paddling. It's so cool seeing people that are really fast, because I put a lot of time and effort into it, and these guys just make it look so effortless and graceful. This was actually a name with Justin DiGiorgio that inspired him to get into surf ski, was Matt Bowman. And we're here fumbling on the podcast trying to figure out this guy's name. Yeah. And that's exactly, we went back after and we're like, oh yeah, it was Matt Bowman. And you're right, it's not a recognizable name, but seeing that guy in person was just like, I have to give up stand-up paddleboard at the time. Surf ski is the way. It's so inspirational seeing some of these athletes. Yeah. So it can be understated seeing these people. It's not like a demoralizing thing. It's just, wow. It's amazing. Wow. And if I train, maybe I can be something like that. And that's some of the magic that these guys bring when they're introduced to these races.
Well, you're not going to ever get the 6'8" part. I'm sorry.
Well,
maybe 5'8".
All kinds of advancements in technology. I can make my shin bones longer. I can make 5'6", Rob, if I just keep at it. All right. We got one more Sharkbite question on wing. Oh, my God. Number 8, man. All right. Oh,
this one's burning.
All right, everybody, we're here. We're wing number 8, the Bomb Evolution. So if you watch Hot Ones, number 8 is where things get real. Luckily, though, they have reinvented their formula for the bomb. So it's not just mace that they spray on there, right? There's actual, hot peppers. So this one is only 10,000 Scovilles more than the last one. So it should be pretty similar, but the smell is it smells like it's going to be super hot. All right, Rob, let's see what What are you guys laughing at over there? Did you eat them? You guys eating these?
I know I don't like it. I'm not eating that.
How'd you like that one, Rob?
Whew. Okay, here comes the burn. So, I have noticed that in the episodes, people try to not get it on their lips, and I did not do that.
That's perfect, because that segues. We got you on your back heels again. Tell us about the Sharkbite conclusion and some of the fallout from not hosting the race anymore. I get messages. Why doesn't Sharkbite I'm not even affiliated with it at all. I just live in Florida. So tell me about that conclusion to one of the major races that even 6 years later has left a giant impact on the community.
Well, yeah. So, good question. This burns like hell. Hold on. I'm going to the milk.
Rob's milking it. This is 20 episodes of the podcast talking about the Sharkbite Classic. And now we have Rob here, and we're punishing him with hot sauces.
Damn. Okay, so last year, 2018, why was it the last year for the race? So for personal reasons, which I won't get into, but as well as, I worked for quite a while in the Parks and Rec system within Florida, spoke at the state level at conferences regarding like two of the topics that I taught in state conference was what you should require of a paddle sports company that wants to offer classes, events, and such out of your municipality, out of your county, and such. When you hold an event, and no offense to anyone, but when you do it the right way and you include all the entities that need to be involved, from your local law enforcement to your Marine Patrol, to your EMS support, as well as the city, the county, and state, if that's the case, it's got increasingly difficult to hold a large event in the state of Florida. And without sponsorship money, which the last several years of Sharkbite, we were very fortunate to get a large sponsorship from the Visit St. Pete Clearwater Commission. But without that, you're looking at a few $1,000s just to say, hey, I want to put this event on. I want to put this event on, to include all the entities that need to be involved. And, so state park changes at the top to, just the changes in insurance requirements and so forth and so on. It just became, like I said before, it became something that went from, a labor of love to starting to become more labor. And to be honest, like I said, there were some personal reasons in there too. We had some failing health on our third. The Sharkbite was a combination of myself, Karen Tickner, and Mike Moran. So many of you know Skinny Mike, Mike with his van. It was a labor of love between the three of us, and for some failing health reasons, some personal reasons, some just logistically difficult to deal with the bureaucracy anymore. It was like, you know what, we've had a great run, and let's finish on top. The other part of that question, which is sometimes the annoying, sometimes the fun one, to your point, yeah, you hear people asking you, why doesn't this race happen anymore? Last few years, I haven't been on the race scene quite as much as normal. Previous years, and but anytime I am, I no less than a dozen times when is Sharkbite coming back, and when is this? So let me lay it out right now. Sharkbite Challenge will never be back. However, an event that I have an influence in that may be powered by SBC is a possibility on the future. So any of the brands out there that are listening to this podcast is getting more and more popular. Hey, we need another big industry event in Florida. I am willing to help out, but I am not going to be the end all to this. This will be a committee event. But I do miss it. And like I said before, paddling has given me a lot in my life. And I feel like I'm in constant debt. I will always be in debt to give back what I have gained from this sport. So I can't give any promises, but I can say I'll be involved in something again.
I think that's a great answer. And that segues us into wing number 9. I'm unfazed by wing number 8. All right, so all these wings is a household event here, right? So we got everybody is trying Chili Mono Loco from Montesanos. It's a crazy fun crew down in Costa Rica. Secret mix of super hot peppers, lemon, and vinegar. The sauce is simple and hot with all caps. Wing number 9. All right, Rob, are you ready for this? This was your idea, by the way. I want to point that out.
It was my idea. I'll be remembering this, that it was also my idea tomorrow morning.
From fond memories, not from bowel movements or anything like that. See, that isn't so bad. It's only 680,000 Scovilles. It's only 600 times more Scovilles than the first one.
I feel this in my nose. Like inside my nose somehow.
It's in my ears.
Do you guys all, you're all eating it? Oh, wow. Oh, look at that. You guys look like you're enjoying it. Christina, both of them are crying. All right, so question number 9. This is an abstract one, and I'm going to go over some of our similarities. We got Robert M, and I'm Robert N, right? The next one down.
Yeah.
Me and Rob have so many similarities, it will freak you out. So number 1, which is one that you've alluded to, is the sport of paddling has given you so much, and you feel indebted to give it back. And I feel the same exact way early on. I was like, man, this sport has given me purpose and a reason to kind of go through life, right? And giving that back. One thing we have a commonality.
I care about what you're saying. I do not care about this wing.
Rob also has a deep love for pugs. And I do too, man. They are the goofiest little animal on the planet. I love pugs. We both drive Tacomas, right? Toyota. Apparently, we're like 1 and 1 on that.
Yeah.
We both paddle a little bit of everything, right? I love surf ski now. Rob is big into surf ski. We've all done SUP, steering, OC6, OC1, all those similarities. So, as we're looking at these similarities, oh, one more. We have 2 Christinas that we're married to in the garage, not the garage, in the kitchen. Sorry, yeah, they're in the house. No biggie. So, a lot of similarities across the board. What will the iteration of the Robert O be? Right, we got M, we got N. What is the next generation Robert? What is he even going to look like? What is he going to be? What do you imagine an evolution beyond from you to me? Who is the next person to inherit the paddling world?
Gosh. So, damn, this is hot. Like my lips, my nose. But could it be a Roberta O? Could it be a Roberta O?
It could be.
She could still have a love of Tacomas and going off road, and of everything paddling. But yeah, no, I mean, so right outside of Europe, Australia, South Africa, Hawaii, paddling for women is still not as big it is, right? We go to the races. It is primarily still male. SUP was pushing that envelope a little bit. But if we're off the cuff here, which you got me with a great question. I love this question. Yeah, no, I would love for it to be a Roberta O, and for her to just be a badass that just goes out, shows up with the boys, and just brings the sport. Like I hope I have, and I know you have, especially in this region that was nothing for paddling, that, Inverness and Florida City and stuff, which is, and you're entirely responsible for, but just excites more women to be badasses in the sport, because they're naturally, they listen better. Women listen better. Women are naturally better athletes, and they naturally have better balance. So it only makes sense. We just need to make the sport fun and inviting for them, and I think Roberta could do it.
Roberta O. So, real quick, we'll get this from the ladies in the kitchen. What is Roberta O's husband's name that is the opposite of Christina? Christian. So they're going to be married to a Christian. So, we got a couple of generations to have this play out. So keep in mind, if there's a Roberta O, we take full responsibility for that occurring in the paddling world. So the final wing, 2.6 million Scovilles. It is 5 times as hot as the last one. And let's get right to it. I'm ready.
I'll hand it to you.
Okay,
All right, here we are, second guessing our choices in life. All right, so we got number 10. This is the final wing. Hot Ones, the Last Dab Experience. 2.693 Scovilles. How do they measure it? I don't care. It is hotter than hell. I'm going to take the time to read this to you all. You've come this far, now it's time to summit Mount Scoville, featuring the official world's hottest chili. The Last Dab Experience is our most potent last dab yet, with over 91% of this recipe being Pepper X. Add an extra dab to your wing to live the tradition and enjoy the experience. All right, Rob. Go ahead and dab that up. This is already pretty dabbed up. We got two evil
sabotaging
people.
us.
Oh my god.
So even before this one already, my lips. So if I could describe my lips, it's somewhere between sunburn, windburn, and when you were a teenager and you made out for the first time and you were just a little over aggressive. It's somewhere in that world. Like they just have this burning, dry sensation right now, and I haven't even done this one yet.
All right, so we're gonna eat this, and then I have a long-winded question for Rob.
Oh,
All
boy.
right, here we go. Whose idea was this?
Jesus, Mary, Joseph, Peter, Paul. I think every one of the apostles.
All right, let's see if Rob can hear me as I go through our last question. So the last dab is about experience. The last dab experience. That's the name of the sauce. So looking at paddle sports in Florida, in the history, looking to pivot that into the future, right? The history gives us a roadmap to what can come in the future. What are some of the experiences that are crucial to captivating some of the new people within the sport to stick around for the long haul?
Okay, milk.
That's right. Drink your milk, kids. That's what's going to keep you in paddle sports longer.
Wow, good. So I get to talk, and it kind of somehow makes the burn less. But yeah, no. So one of the things I touched on before is I think we need to make sure we're recognizing anybody, because like I said, we all spend our hard-earned money, our time away from our family, our time away from work, our coveted PTO or vacation hours, right? We all spend that to go to these events. So to like I said, it doesn't need to be something crazy. It doesn't need to be this big, huge, award, but just to be pulled up and recognized in front of your peers for a job well done. I think that's going to be one of the things. Damn, my lips. That's going to be one of the things that kind of gets there. What are some other things? This should be an easy question to answer. But again, it's controversial. I think it as a race director, as somebody who's helped put on races, who still consults now, make it a destination, right? So Chattajack, right? The juggernaut, that and the Gorge race, right? The two juggernauts that are left, right? It's all about the experience. It's a whole festival. It's a whole thing. So let's figure out how, big or small, let's figure out how to make it something that I look forward to coming to, next year. I want to give a shout out to the Skyway Challenge. They did a great job as an inaugural event, and some great competition in the OC6s. I couldn't make it to the singles and doubles day, but that kind of vibe, like a welcoming family experience, something that we can all kind of all look forward to. And then lastly, again, I mean, I'm known for sometimes speaking my mind and not always making friends, but how about we just don't take ourselves too serious as racers, right? So you asked it before, and I think I was sidetracked a little bit from some of this heat. But what was really the reason that Sharkbite Challenge got started? It got started, to be honest with you, because Karen, myself, and Mike went to a lot of races around the country. And Sharkbite was created to become the antithesis of some of the negative experiences that we felt from those events. I remember being alienated. I remember being the new kid on the block, being kayak boy, all of these things. And I think, like I said, let's just get past ourselves and be welcoming, be inviting to anyone that's out there. I don't care if you are on a Rubbermaid, ocean kayak, plastic pink sit on top like I was in the very beginning, to top of the line, pre-pregged carbon, machine. You know what? Everyone's coming from a different experience. Everyone's coming from a different, environment. And you could be that person that influences them. You're red too, by the way.
We can fix that in post-production. We can make me brown.
but you know what? You could be that person. You could be that person that just takes them to that next level, that convinces them to get that. Woo! Something just went down my throat. It was one of those seeds. You could be that person that convinces them to take that next step. That is their influence. And that is something that I would love to see. That's a personal challenge. I'm kind of looking at the camera, but that's a personal challenge I'd like to give everybody is, at the next event that you're at, go out of your way to find one person that maybe looks new or that you don't know, and either introduce yourself, make that person feel comfortable, make that person feel welcome, take them under your wing, especially if it's their first race, because we all remember our first race, very intimidating. I think it's still an obscure sport in this country, but I do think as accessibility continues, and as statistically we're just getting more and more people on the water, that we can make this a much more inclusive and open environment for everyone.
Yeah, very well said. So one of the big things with the podcast is unity across sports, right? We don't have a line in the sand saying SUP on one side and OC and surf ski on this side. And the same idea with promoting new paddlers within the sport. All it takes is somebody to wake up one day and like, hey, I'm going to do a Wednesday night 5K. I'm going to be nice to the next person at my race. I'm going to run a race. And that's one of the things, if you guys kind of suffer through all these podcasts, is it just takes an internal motivation, and you can make a huge change within our very small community, right? K2N is a great example. I just woke up one day and was like, hey, if somebody's going to do it, it's got to be me. If I waited around for somebody to do it in Inverness, I'd still be waiting, right? And it's the same for your area, for races in your area, right? If you can make the difference, that goes a very long way. So, Rob, we're at the end. We're all done. We're down the roller coaster a little bit. Is there any final thoughts that you have to say to the paddling pursuit nation out there?
Oh, gosh, yeah. Just enjoy what you do, and don't forget why you started. So last couple of years, like I said, I haven't been racing as much and been traveling more and doing a few other things. But more than anything, I really love getting out on the water just for myself again. And so just don't forget what brought you here in the first place, and make sure you take some time to visit that. I think that's an important thing that we can all take with us, moving forward.
Excellent. That concludes the Paddling Pursuit on YouTube. We hit 4,000 subscribers today, and this is a special for that. Thank you all so much for tuning in, being part of that, and I hope you all enjoyed this episode. If you like it, leave some comments. We'll try to do it again with some unsuspecting victim. And if not, we'll never do it again. We'll see how it goes. Rob, thank you again so much for taking time to come on.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
And thank you, Christina's, for cooking and being part of this and watching. It couldn't have happened without you. We did it! I can't believe it.
Oh my God, it's so I'm drooling.